Hi guys. So I hope you'll forgive the somewhat clickbaity title of this, but I actually think it's pretty accurate. Um, and here's what got me thinking about this. The so we're prepping for Zolder for our league race this week, and it's a track that I haven't been on in a very long time, right? Enough that I have made substantial changes to how I go about um, driving the car since the last time I was on Zolder. So when I started doing my prep for it yesterday, I realized that there were some pretty significant changes that I was going to have to make uh, compared to the last time I was on this track. Right? I do things a lot differently than I did back then. And we also just finished up racing at Imola, and that was in the rain. And I know a lot of people struggle in the rain, and I think it's related to what I want to talk about in this video, um, because I don't know how you guys go about getting better, what you look at, and how you try to improve. But for me, I use a lot of different sources of information in order to try to learn and figure out what it is that I need to work on. And probably one of the biggest things that I figured out over time, not on any given day, but just over time, is that there are some things that all of the really fast drivers in ACC do that they have in common, right? And I personally think I have identified three things that they all do. There might be more that I just haven't figured out yet, but I feel pretty confident about these three things. And for at least probably the past maybe 9 months at least, maybe even up to a year. I'm not exactly sure where that sort of started clicking in my brain, but for a significant amount of time, these are three things that I have been gradually incorporating into my driving style as I move from track to track, right? And every time I go to a different track where I haven't done it before, like Zolder, I have to re-implement all of those things kind of from scratch. It's easier now because it's becoming second nature to me, so that I know what I want to try to accomplish in line with these goals. But I think what it might do for you is if you struggle to kind of know where you should go from a direction standpoint on your improvement as a driver, these three things might give you a pretty good starting point for how to go about your business. So, what are the three things that I'm talking about? First of all, aliens always use the entire track, period, right? Whatever track is available for them to use, they use it, okay? There are caveats to that, obviously, because there is to everything. Um, so, so what does that mean? That means, first of all, what do the track limits allow you, right? It means you have to know where the track limits are. If you don't know to within, a couple of inches where the track limits are, and therefore you can safely drive right here without picking up a track limits violation, or if you push it a little bit too hard, you will start picking up a track limits violation. If you don't know where that is on each and every corner at each and every track, then chances are you are leaving time on the track as a result because you're not maximizing the available space that you have to work in. Okay, so that's number one. Aliens always maximize the track. Now that will be limited somewhat by um, by the car they're driving and the conditions they're driving in. Right? We just came off of Imola. You know that there are wet curves there that you simply can't touch in the rain, that you can when you're in dry conditions. Right? You also know that if you're in a front engine car like the Bentley or the Mercedes, something along those lines, then you have a significant advantage on some of those curbs over some of the mid-engine cars, for instance, like the Lamborghini, the Honda NSX, that kind of thing, right? So the car can be a limiting factor, and so can the weather. But aliens always figure out where that line is, right? What do the track limits let them do? What does the car they're driving let them do? And what do the weather conditions let them do? Whatever the maximum is, they find it, they exploit it. Okay? Period. Number 2, they hit apexes every time, right? If you watch any of your favorite alien driver, and I don't care who it is, you can shoot out a list of names, right? Jardier would probably come to everybody's mind, but he races a lot with George Boothby, Samir Foch, right? Niels Najax, James Baldwin, Tortellini, right? There's a bunch of guys there who would make that list who are going to regularly wind up in the top of a very stacked field, and be competing at every track in whatever car it is that they're driving. They're good. They know their business. But whoever your favorite is, when you really watch the race, not just, where they're doing, they're fast, they're really good, I don't know how to do that. When you really watch what they're doing, right? One of the things that you will notice about all aliens is that they always hit the apex. Period. Now they're human, which means they will make mistakes, and sometimes they won't hit it quite as well as they do. But when you compare them to someone who is just kind of progressing in their improvement of being a sim racer, and particularly in ACC, the difference between how they hit how they hit apexes and how we have a tendency to hit apexes is vast, right? There's a huge difference. So as a result, I consider that non-negotiable, right? If you are trying to improve, you must hit apexes, and you must do whatever is required of you within your skill set, whatever that is at any given time, right? You must hit the apexes. If you don't, you're giving away time, period. You've got to do it consistently. If that means you have to slow down a little bit, brake a little bit earlier, whatever the case is, I think that is a must, right? Because this is a non-negotiable part of being a sim racer, and especially in ACC. Number 3, you will see them, when they hit an apex, attack the throttle. Okay? Watch any race, any hot lap as well, but I differentiate a bit between hot laps and races. But watch their race, and you can tell after a while that their goal is that as soon as they hit the apex, they want to get back full throttle as quickly as possible. And the vast majority of corners, that means that as soon as they hit the apex, they're slamming the throttle to 100%. Okay? Not every corner, and frankly, Zolder is a good example of that. But if it is an independent corner, which means it's not tied to another corner in some way, then I think you will see that that percentage shoot up to nearly 100%, right? So I think you could make this pretty good generalization. An alien driver on an independent corner will attempt to go max full throttle as soon as they hit the apex. Almost 100% of the time. Okay? The thing that will keep them from doing it on those types of corners are because, and I'm disregarding rain, wet conditions for the moment, so I'm just talking about a dry track. What will keep them from doing that is there's something particular about that corner where it is unusually slippery, right? where you really have to just be a little bit more gentle on the throttle. You will see corners like that where they have to be just a little bit more cautious. So that's one thing that will keep them from doing it. And two, when they make a mistake, when they just don't hit it quite right. Now, it won't look like a mistake to us compared to the way we drive, right? It will still look ridiculously good because they'll still be within a tenth of their standard lap time, even when they make a mistake, because their mistakes are so small, right? But if you really focus on it, you watch lap after lap of how they go about their business, you will see that at those independent corners, their goal is on essentially every one to hit the apex and go slamming full throttle, right? And the only times they don't are when they either make a very small mistake or there's something very particular about that corner that doesn't allow them to attack it the way they would on every other corner. Okay. Now on dependent corners, right? So all the chicanes that we have here at Zolder. As a general rule, you will see them using the same approach, but on the second corner of those chicanes, right? So if you have two dependent corners, the rule still generally holds, but it holds for the second corner of the two, right? So like you can see me, I'm in hot lap mode because that's what I've been practicing in right now, and they won't necessarily go full throttle as they immediately get out of or hit the apex of the left-hander, but they will be looking to go full throttle as soon as they hit the apex of the right-hander. Okay. What happens at the first corner is very dependent on a lot of things, so I don't want to lump that into these sort of general rules and characterizations that I'm making here. But there's no question in my mind that at least 90% of the time an alien is attempting to go maximum throttle as soon as they hit the apex of a corner. Okay? Make a liar out of me. Go find me a true alien who's in that top tier who doesn't do that on a regular basis, and make a liar out of me, because I haven't seen it yet. Okay, so what does that mean? If you really think about that, then from a practical standpoint, if you take those three rules into consideration, right? Then what is really the difference between alien drivers? If you look at from one alien driver to the next, what is it that separates them? Sometimes it's the car, right? Because the BOP, if you watch AOR, for instance, a lot, you'll hear those guys complaining constantly about how they got fucked by the BOP. It's hilarious in my mind, right? Because they're so good that matters. It doesn't matter to us because we're not good enough to maximize the car to the point where that BOP really affects us that much. But they are so good that 0.2 of a second really matters when you're going up against a fellow alien who can match you for skill, right? But where they differ fundamentally is what they do between the beginning of the braking zone and the apex, right? Because they're all going to be using the same amount of track, generally speaking. They're all going to be hitting the apex at essentially the same spot, and they're all going to be looking to immediately get back on the throttle as soon as they hit that apex, right? So from the midpoint of the corner, or immediately thereafter, because a lot of them are late apexes, right? From the moment you reach that point on, all aliens are essentially identical, right? Which means that if you begin with that thought process in your mind, you can achieve half of everything that an alien does, so long as you follow those three rules. Now, that is going to be hard to begin with, because it's going to reveal some significant weaknesses in your skill level. Because the real difference between an amateur and an alien is the skill level which they exhibit between the beginning of the braking zone and the apex. It's what they do on the brakes with the steering wheel and the throttle up until that point. If you really watch the aliens, that's where you're going to see the variation in how they go about their business. Okay? And that's not something I'm going to get into here, because you're talking about a dozen different techniques, all combined into one. Lots of different choices and executing in different ways. And parsing out those differences would be impossible for me to do between all of the aliens. But what I am suggesting is that you will never be able to, I don't think you'll even be able to successfully identify what it is that you need to work on to get better in that critical area between the beginning of the braking zone and the apex until you start mirroring those other three things, right? So until you understand, until you really know that you are using all of the track available, until you can consistently hit the apex like you're supposed to, and until you can consistently attack the throttle as soon as you hit or get clear of the apex, then you're never going to figure out what it is you're doing wrong before that point. That is why I think this is an important thing to talk about and an important thing to understand. So for practical purposes, for me, for instance, when I come back to Zolder after a very long time, and I need to look, the way you were doing things the last time you were here is not correct. It's not the same. So what do? I come to a hot lap session and I look at my, am I using all of the track? No, that second chicane, there's a little bit more on the inside there that I can use before I start getting into a track limit violation. Okay, I'm going to practice that. Am I hitting the apex consistently? Right? Turns one and 2, tricky, super tricky. I know I have to be able to hit those consistently. So to begin with, I'm going to go slow. I'm going to start braking 10 meters earlier than that to ensure that I am getting the car turned into the apex properly every time. And if I do that, is what's going to allow me to get back on the throttle immediately and with full force, right? So I will do slower laps to begin with, and the effort that I'm putting in is to maintain those 3 rules and then start figuring out what I can do better between the moment I get on the brakes and the moment I hit that apex in order to make myself faster there without sacrificing any of those 3 fundamentals. Okay? That is essentially what I will be doing or have been doing in hot lap session, and what I will continue to do. Now, I'm already a half a second under my previous PB, and frankly, I expect to chew it, close to another half a second off of that, in the next couple of days, by the time I really get a feel for the changes that I'm making. But everything I do initially is with those 3 fundamentals in mind. If you want to be as fast as an alien, you have to be able to do some of the things that they do. Those 3, in my opinion, are not optional, but once you get those down, then you can start incorporating sort of stylistic differences into your own approach and what you're most comfortable with in that critical skill zone between the beginning of the braking zone and the apex. So I hope that makes sense. It's something that I think is pretty important. I believe that if you start incorporating that type of thinking and that approach into your practice and into your goal to improve, right? and really dedicate yourself to it, I think it will help you tremendously down the road. It takes time because you're going to see that it forces you to change how you go about doing things significantly for a lot of people and a lot of different tracks. But I think it will start to make sense and change how you do things for the better in the long run. So, with that thought in mind, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, shoot me a DM, whatever. But otherwise, take care, guys. We'll see you later.